I spent $12,000 creating my parents' dream backyard. Then, I found out about the dinner party they were throwing there without me. Want to know what I did next? Let's just say they learned a very expensive lesson about taking family for granted. You know that feeling when you finally think you've got your life together, when all the pieces start falling into place and you can actually breathe for the first time in years. That was me 3 months ago. Chloe Morgan, 28 years old, sitting in my corner office on the 15th floor of a glass tower in downtown Boston, staring at an email that would change everything. Congratulations, Chloe. Your promotion to senior financial analyst has been approved effective immediately. Your new salary will be... I had to read that number 3 times. After 6 years of 60-hour weeks, coffee-stained spreadsheets, and saying no to every invitation because I was always working late, it finally happened. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was actually thriving. The first person I called was my mom. Of course it was my mom. That's what I do. I'm the daughter who calls with good news first, who remembers birthdays, who shows up when things fall apart. I'm what my family likes to call reliable Chloe. Some might call it being the family fixer, but I prefer to think of it as just caring. Mom, you're never going to believe this, I said, practically bouncing in my ergonomic office chair as I watched the Charles River glisten through my window. Oh, honey, what is it? Her voice had that warm, slightly breathless quality it always gets when she's excited about something I've accomplished. Like she's genuinely surprised that her daughter might have good news to share. I got the promotion. Senior analyst, the one I've been working toward for 2 years. The pause was longer than I expected. Oh my goodness, Chloe, that's wonderful. Your father will be so proud. We both are. There it was again. That slight hesitation, like she needed a moment to process that her responsible, dependable daughter had actually achieved something significant. But I pushed the thought away. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let old insecurities ruin it. There's more, I continued, pulling up the travel website I'd been secretly browsing during lunch breaks for the past year. Remember that trip to Europe I've been talking about forever, the one I kept saying I'd take someday? Well, someday just became this October. Europe, Chloe, that sounds expensive. Mom, I can afford it now. For the first time in my adult life, I can actually afford to do something just for me. The silence stretched on, and I found myself filling it the way I always do when conversations with my parents get uncomfortable. I'm thinking 2 weeks. Maybe start in London, then Paris, Rome. I've got so many vacation days saved up. HR practically begged me to use them. 2 weeks is a long time to be away. Something in her tone made me stop scrolling through flight prices. Mom, I'm 28. I think I can handle 2 weeks in Europe. Of course you can, sweetheart. It's just, well, you know how your father and I worry. And with you so far away already. There it was. The guilt. Subtle, expertly deployed, and wrapped in concern. Boston is a 4-hour drive from the small Connecticut town where I grew up. Hardly the other side of the world, but according to my parents, I might as well be living on Mars. I'm not moving to Europe, Mom. It's just a vacation. I know. We're happy for you, really. You work so hard, you deserve this. The words were right, but something felt off. Like she was reading from a script titled, How to Be a Supportive Mother, but hadn't quite memorized her lines yet. That conversation happened on a Tuesday. By Friday, everything had shifted in a way I never saw coming. I was at my parents' house for our usual monthly dinner. Nothing fancy, just lasagna and salad in the dining room that still had the same wallpaper from when I was in high school. My dad was telling some story about his coworker's fishing trip, and my mom was doing that thing where she pretends to listen while actually organizing the salt and pepper shakers into perfect alignment. Oh, Chloe, she said suddenly, interrupting my dad mid-sentence about bass fishing techniques. I meant to show you something. She disappeared into the kitchen and came back with her phone swiping through what looked like hundreds of screenshots. I've been saving these for months. Look at this. Pinterest. Of course it was Pinterest. My mother had discovered Pinterest 2 years ago and had since become convinced that our ordinary suburban backyard could be transformed into something worthy of better homes and gardens. Look at this stone patio, she said, tilting the phone toward me. And this pergola with the hanging lights, isn't it gorgeous? I leaned in to get a better look. The image showed a backyard that looked like it belonged to a luxury resort. Natural stone pavers arranged in an intricate pattern, a cedar pergola draped with twinkling lights, an outdoor kitchen with a built-in grill and bar seating. It was beautiful, in an expensive, HGTV kind of way. It is gorgeous, I agreed, handing the phone back to her. Very Pinterest-worthy. Your father and I have been dreaming about redoing the backyard for years. Ever since the Hendersons got their new deck installed, we've been feeling a little, well, you know how it is. I did know how it is. Suburban competition is a real thing, and my parents have always been quietly aware of how their house stacks up against the neighbors. Not in an obnoxious way, but in that subtle middle-class way where you notice when someone gets new siding or installs a pool. It would be perfect for entertaining, my dad chimed in, setting down his fork. We could finally host those barbecues we're always talking about. Maybe even do something for your birthday next year. My birthday. The one they forgot last year because they were busy planning a surprise party for my cousin Teresa. But I didn't say that. I never say that. How much would something like this cost? I asked, scrolling through more of her saved images. Oh, we haven't really looked into it seriously. It's just a dream, you know. Maybe when we retire in a few years, we'll have enough saved up. My mom's voice had that wistful quality it gets when she talks about things she wants but doesn't think she can have. It's the same tone she used when she used to flip through travel magazines and sigh about places she'd like to visit someday. And that's when it hit me. I had just gotten a significant raise. I had money in my savings account for the first time since college. I was planning to spend thousands of dollars wandering around Europe by myself, taking pictures of things I could just as easily see in books. But here were my parents who had supported me through college, who had always been there when I needed them, sitting in their 40-year-old house dreaming about a backyard renovation they couldn't afford. What if I paid for it? The words came out before I had fully thought them through. But once they were out there hanging in the air between us, I realized I meant them. What? My mom looked up from her phone, eyes wide. The backyard renovation. What if I paid for it as a gift? My dad nearly choked on his water. Chloe, honey, that's very generous, but we couldn't ask you to do something like that. You're not asking. I'm offering. I could feel excitement building in my chest the same way it did when I solved a particularly complicated financial analysis at work. I just got this promotion, I'm making good money now, and honestly, what better way to spend it than on something that would make you both happy? But your trip to Europe. We'll still be there next year, or the year after. Europe's not going anywhere. I reached for her phone again, looking at the images with new eyes. This is something you could enjoy every day, and it would be perfect for family gatherings. My mom was staring at me like I had just offered to buy them a small country. Chloe, this would cost thousands of dollars. And I have thousands of dollars. For the first time in my life, I can actually afford to do something like this. What I didn't say was how good it felt to finally be in a position to give back to them. How tired I was of being the daughter who needed help with her security deposit, who borrowed money for car repairs, who always felt like she was taking more than she was giving. I don't know what to say, my mom whispered, and I could see tears forming in the corners of her eyes. Say yes. Let me do this for you. My dad was looking back and forth between my mom and me like he was watching a tennis match. Are you absolutely sure about this, kiddo? This isn't a small expense. I'm sure. Actually, I'm more than sure. I'm excited about it. And I was. The more I thought about it, the more perfect it seemed. My parents could have the backyard of their dreams. I could finally do something meaningful with my success. And we'd all have a beautiful space to enjoy together for years to come. We'd need to get quotes, my mom said slowly. Like she was afraid that talking about the practical details might make the whole offer evaporate. Of course, we'll do this right. Get multiple estimates, choose a reputable contractor, make sure everything is done properly. And if it costs more than you're comfortable with? Mom, I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Let me worry about the money. That's what I do for a living. Remember, I'm good with numbers. That's when I saw it. Just for a split second. Something flickered across my mother's face. Surprise, yes, but something else too. Something that looked almost like shock, not grateful. Shock, not happy shock. Just shock, like she couldn't quite believe I was capable of making this kind of gesture. But it happened so fast that I convinced myself I had imagined it. This was my mom after all, the woman who had driven me to every soccer practice, who had stayed up late helping me with school projects, who had cried when I graduated college. Of course, she was just overwhelmed by the generosity of the offer. I can take some time off next week, I continued, already making mental notes about which contractors to research. We can start getting estimates, looking at designs, figuring out exactly what you want. You'd really do all that. I want to do all that. This is going to be fun. My dad cleared his throat. Well, then I guess we're redoing the backyard. My mom let out a little laugh that might have been more relief than joy, but in that moment I was too excited to analyze it too deeply. I was finally in a position to take care of my parents the way they had always taken care of me. There's just one thing, my mom said, setting her phone down carefully on the table. What's that? This is incredibly generous, sweetheart. More generous than we ever expected. We just want to make sure you're not sacrificing too much. Your trip, your savings. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm choosing to spend my money on something that matters to me. And you two matter to me more than any vacation. The tears in her eyes spilled over then, and she got up to come around the table and hug me. I love you so much, she whispered into my hair. I love you too, Mom. But as she held me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about her reaction was just slightly off. Not wrong exactly, but not quite right either. Like she was surprised by more than just the offer itself. I pushed the thought away. This was supposed to be a happy moment, a moment when I finally got to be the daughter who could solve problems instead of creating them. Whatever weird energy I was picking up on was probably just my own anxiety about spending such a large amount of money. After all, this was my family, the people who knew me best, who loved me unconditionally, who had always been proud of my achievements. If they seemed a little shocked by my offer, it was only because they weren't used to thinking of me as someone who could afford grand gestures. That would change soon enough. As I drove home that night, already mentally researching landscape contractors and calculating rough budgets, I felt a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the summer weather. For the first time in years, I was excited about spending money, not because I was buying something for myself, but because I was buying happiness for the people I loved most. I had no idea that I was actually buying something very different, something that would cost me far more than money and teach me things about my family that I was nowhere near ready to learn. But that night, driving through the quiet Connecticut suburbs with my windows down and my music up, I was just a daughter who had finally figured out how to give back to her parents. It felt like the beginning of something beautiful. The next morning, I woke up with the kind of energy I usually reserve for major work presentations. I had a mission now, and anyone who knows me will tell you that when I set my mind to something, I go all in. By 8 a.m., I was already on my laptop with coffee in hand, researching landscape contractors in Connecticut. I spent 3 hours going through websites, reading reviews, and cross-referencing Better Business Bureau ratings. This wasn't just any backyard renovation. This was my parents' dream, and I was going to make sure they got exactly what they deserved. The best materials, the most reliable contractors, and a design that would make the neighbors stop and stare. That's how I found Greenview Landscaping. Their website looked professional without being flashy. Real photos of completed projects, not stock images. Testimonials that sounded genuine. They'd been in business for 15 years, had an A+ rating with the BBB, and specialized in exactly the kind of upscale outdoor living spaces my mom had been pinning on Pinterest. I called them at 9:30 sharp. Greenview Landscaping, this is Marcus speaking. Hi Marcus, my name is Chloe Morgan. I'm interested in getting a quote for a complete backyard renovation for my parents. Stone patio pergola, outdoor kitchen, the works. Sounds like a beautiful project. We'd love to help you with that. When would be convenient for an initial consultation? How about this afternoon? Marcus laughed. I like your enthusiasm. Let me check our schedule. Actually, we had a cancellation. Would 2 o'clock work? Perfect. I immediately called my mom to let her know, expecting her to be as excited as I was. Instead, she seemed almost hesitant. This afternoon? That's very fast, don't you think? Mom, why wait? You've been dreaming about this for months. Let's make it happen. It's just, well, I haven't even had time to organize my Pinterest boards properly. What if I forget to show them something important? Then we'll schedule another meeting. This is just the initial consultation. And your father will want to be there, obviously. Let me call him at work and see if he can get away early. There was something in her voice that I couldn't quite place. Not reluctance exactly, but maybe a kind of nervous energy that seemed disproportionate to the situation. I chalked it up to excitement, mixed with the natural anxiety that comes with making big decisions. My dad managed to leave work early, and at 2 o'clock we were all standing in their backyard with Marcus Chen, the lead designer from Greenview. He was exactly what you'd want in a contractor. Mid-40s, confident but not pushy, and he clearly knew his stuff. This is a great space to work with, he said, walking the perimeter of their yard. Good drainage, plenty of room for the features you're looking at, and the existing mature trees will provide nice natural boundaries. My mom had printed out her Pinterest boards and organized them in a 3-ring binder. She handed it to Marcus like she was turning in a final exam. These are the elements we're most interested in, she said. The stone patio is non-negotiable, and the pergola with the string lights, that's really what I've been dreaming about. Marcus flipped through the images, nodding appreciatively. I can definitely work with this. Let me take some measurements and put together a preliminary design. End quote. Should have something for you by early next week. What kind of timeline are we looking at? I asked. For a project this size, 6 to 8 weeks from contract signing to completion. Maybe 10 weeks if we run into any complications. Perfect. That would put us finishing right around mid-July, which meant my parents would have the whole summer to enjoy their new outdoor space. Marcus spent another hour taking measurements and photos, asking questions about their lifestyle and how they plan to use the space. My parents were like kids on Christmas morning, pointing out details and asking about possibilities. What about a fire pit? My dad asked. Nothing fancy, just something for cooler evenings. Absolutely doable. We could incorporate it into the stone patio design. And overhead lighting, my mom added. Not just the string lights on the pergola, but maybe some landscape lighting too. Great idea, really helps extend the usable hours of the space. I watched my parents get more and more excited, and I felt this warm satisfaction spreading through my chest. This was exactly what I'd hoped for. They deserved to have nice things to feel proud of their home, to have a space where they could entertain and relax. Marcus left with promises to have a detailed proposal ready by Tuesday. The rest of the weekend passed in a blur of excited phone calls between my parents and various relatives, all of whom wanted to hear about the upcoming renovation. Tuesday morning, I took a personal day so I could be there when Marcus presented his proposal. I drove up from Boston, stopping at the fancy coffee shop downtown to pick up lattes for everyone. It felt like we were about to sign a major business deal, which in a way we were. Marcus arrived right on time with a leather portfolio and a tablet full of 3D renderings. The presentation was everything I could have hoped for and more. Based on our conversation and your inspiration images, here's what I'm proposing, he said, setting up the tablet so we could all see the screen. The 3D rendering was incredible. Our ordinary suburban backyard had been transformed into something that belonged in a home and garden magazine. The stone patio flowed seamlessly from the back door, expanding into a larger entertainment area beneath a gorgeous cedar pergola. Warm string lights draped between the wooden beams. An outdoor kitchen area with built-in grill and bar seating. Comfortable lounge furniture arranged around a stone fire pit. "Oh my God," my mom whispered, her hand pressed to her chest. "It's perfect. It's exactly what I pictured." My dad was nodding slowly the way he does when he's trying not to get too excited about something he wants but thinks he can't have. This is really something special. Let's talk numbers. Marcus continued, flipping to a detailed breakdown of costs. For everything you see here, we're looking at $8,400. I felt a little flutter in my stomach, but it was manageable. 8,400 was a lot of money, but it wasn't going to break me. And seeing the pure joy on my parents' faces made it feel like the best money I'd ever spent. That includes all materials, labor, and cleanup, Marcus explained. Stone pavers, cedar pergola, basic outdoor kitchen setup, fire pit, and standard landscape lighting package. What about furniture? My mom asked, pointing to the lounge chairs and dining set in the rendering. Furniture would be separate. I can recommend some retailers, but most clients prefer to shop for that themselves. My mom was already making notes in the margins of Marcus's proposal. And what if we wanted to upgrade some elements? The lighting, for instance, or maybe a nicer grill for the outdoor kitchen, Marcus smiled. Always room for upgrades. Let me walk you through some options. That's when things started to shift in a way I didn't immediately recognize as problematic. For the lighting, instead of the basic landscape package, we could do the premium LED system. Much brighter, more zone, smart home compatible. That would add about $600 to the total. Smart home compatible. My mom's eyes lit up. So we could control it from our phones. Exactly. Very convenient for entertaining. What about the grill? My dad asked. What comes with the basic outdoor kitchen? Standard built-in propane grill, about 36 inches. Good quality, but if you're serious about outdoor cooking, I'd recommend upgrading to the premium model. Better heat distribution, more cooking space, side burners. That upgrade runs about $800. I watched my parents exchange glances and I could see them mentally calculating not just the cost, but the possibilities. This wasn't just about having a nice backyard anymore. This was about having the kind of outdoor space where they could really entertain, where they could be proud to host family gatherings. What else? My mom asked, leaning forward in her chair. Oh, well, the string lights included in the base package are nice, but if you really want that magical ambiance, I'd suggest the bistro light upgrade. Warmer color temperature, dimmable, and they're designed to last much longer. About 200 more. And seating, my dad added. The fire pit area looks a little sparse with just the built-in stone benches. Good eye. We could add some additional built-in seating, maybe with storage underneath. 400 for that upgrade. I was doing mental math as they talked. 600 for lighting, 800 for the grill, 200 for better string lights, 400 for additional seating. That was $2,000 in upgrades, bringing the total to over $10,000. But watching my parents get excited about features they'd never dreamed they could afford, I found myself nodding along. This was supposed to be their dream backyard, not just a basic renovation. If I was going to do this, I wanted to do it right. The storage seating sounds practical, I said. And the premium grill makes sense if you're going to be using it regularly. Are you sure? My mom asked, but I could tell she was hoping I'd say yes. It's getting expensive. It's an investment. You'll have this backyard for decades. Might as well make it exactly what you want. Marcus was adding up numbers on his tablet. With the lighting, upgrade, premium grill, bistro lights, and additional seating, we're looking at a total of $10,200. $10,200. More than I'd ever spent on anything except my car and college tuition. But seeing the way my parents were looking at the renderings, like they couldn't quite believe this beautiful space could actually be theirs, made the number feel worth it. Let's do it, I said. The words came out more confidently than I felt, but once they were out there, I committed to them. This was what success was for Wright. Being able to do things like this for the people you love. Really? My mom asked, and there were tears in her eyes again. Really? All the upgrades, let's make it perfect. That's when my mom did something that caught me completely off guard. She stood up, walked around the table, and hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. This is everything I ever dreamed of, she whispered in my ear. More than I ever dreamed of. You're giving us something so beautiful, so perfect. I can't believe you're doing this for us. There was something about the way she said it that made me pause. Not the gratitude, which was touching and genuine, but the surprise. Like she genuinely couldn't believe I was capable of this kind of generosity. Like she'd never seen me as the type of person who could pull off something this significant. But the moment passed quickly. Marcus was explaining the contract terms, my dad was asking practical questions about permits and timeline, and my mom was already back to flipping through the proposal, pointing out details she wanted to make sure wouldn't be forgotten. We signed the contract that afternoon. I wrote a check for 50% down, $5,100. The biggest check I'd ever written for something that wasn't a necessity. As Marcus packed up his materials and prepared to leave, he shook hands with all three of us. "This is going to be a beautiful project," he told my parents. "You're going to love spending time in this space." "We already do," my mom said, "and it's not even built yet." After Marcus left, we sat in the backyard for another hour looking at the space with new eyes. My parents kept pointing to spots where different elements would go, talking about furniture shopping and planning the first barbecue they'd host. "We should have a big family gathering once it's finished," my dad suggested. "Really christen the space properly." "That's a wonderful idea," my mom agreed. "Maybe in July, once everything's settled and we've had a chance to get used to it." "July sounds perfect," I said, already imagining summer evenings in their beautiful new outdoor space. I drove back to Boston that night feeling like I'd just made one of the best decisions of my life. Sure, it was a lot of money, but it was money well spent. My parents were happier than I'd seen them in years, and I was finally in a position to give back to them in a meaningful way. Over the next few weeks, construction began. I made the drive up from Boston every weekend to check on the progress, and each visit brought new excitement. The stone pavers going in the pergola frame, taking shape, the outdoor kitchen area being framed out. My mom documented every stage with dozens of photos, sending them to me throughout the week with captions like, "Look how beautiful this is going to be," and "I can't wait for you to see it in person." But something else started happening during those weeks, something so subtle that I almost missed it entirely. It was a Saturday in mid-June. I'd driven up to see the progress, and the backyard was really starting to come together. The stone patio was finished and looked incredible. The pergola was up and stained, and they were starting work on the outdoor kitchen. My cousin Leo stopped by while I was there. Leo's my age, my Aunt Diane's son. And we'd always gotten along well. He's one of those people who says exactly what he's thinking, which can be refreshing or annoying depending on the situation. "This is looking pretty fancy," he said, walking around the partially completed space. "Your parents are really going all out." "Well, it's a once-in-a-lifetime renovation," I replied. "Might as well do it right." Leo nodded, poking at one of the stone pavers with his toe. "Funny how you're doing all this and don't even know what the dinner's going to look like." I stopped admiring the pergola and turned to look at him. "What dinner?" Leo shrugged suddenly, looking like he wished he hadn't said anything. "I don't know, just something my mom mentioned. Some family dinner thing your parents are planning." "What kind of family dinner thing?" "Leo, honey, would you like some lemonade?" my mom called from the back door, appearing with perfect timing and a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sure, Aunt Elaine, that sounds great." I watched Leo walk toward the house, leaving me standing alone in the middle of the construction zone with a question mark floating over my head. What dinner? What family gathering that I apparently didn't know about? I followed them inside, planning to ask my mom directly, but by the time I got to the kitchen, Leo was already telling some story about his new job, and the moment had passed. But the question stayed with me. What dinner was my family planning that I didn't know about? And why did Leo seem surprised that I didn't know about it? I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe my parents were thinking about having a small gathering to show off the finished backyard, and they just hadn't mentioned it yet because they wanted it to be a surprise. That would actually be sweet, wouldn't it? But as I drove back to Boston that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that Leo's offhand comment had revealed something I wasn't supposed to know about yet. Something that involved my family making plans that for some reason I wasn't part of. I pushed the thought away. This was supposed to be a happy time. My parents were getting their dream backyard. I was in a position to make that happen for them, and in just a few more weeks, we'd all be enjoying barbecues and summer evenings in a beautiful outdoor space that I had helped create. Whatever dinner Leo was talking about, I was sure it would all make sense soon enough. After all, this was my family. The people who loved me, who were grateful for what I was doing for them, who had always included me in everything important. What could possibly go wrong? You know how sometimes you get a splinter in your finger, and at first, it's just this tiny irritation that you can ignore. But then it starts to throb, and no matter how much you try to distract yourself, you can't stop thinking about it. That's what Leo's comment about the dinner became for me. The following weekend, I brought it up casually while we were all standing around watching the contractors install the outdoor kitchen countertops. So, Dad mentioned you guys might want to have a family gathering once the backyard is finished, I said, trying to sound nonchalant. That sounds really nice. When were you thinking? My mom and dad exchanged one of those quick glances that married couples do when they're having a silent conversation. You know the kind. The split-second eye contact that somehow communicates entire paragraphs of information. Oh, we haven't really firmed anything up yet, my mom said, turning her attention back to the contractors. Just some ideas we've been throwing around. July would be perfect timing, I continued. The weather's usually great, and it would give you a chance to really show off the space. My dad agreed, but he was suddenly very interested in examining the quality of the stonework on the fire pit. That was it. The conversation just died. Not in a natural way where we moved on to another topic, but in that awkward way where everyone suddenly runs out of things to say at exactly the same moment. I told myself I was reading too much into it. They were probably just being thoughtful, not wanting to burden me with party planning details when I was already doing so much for them. That made perfect sense, right? But over the next couple of weeks, I started noticing other things. Little things that individually meant nothing but together started to form a pattern that made my stomach feel weird. Like how my Aunt Diana seemed to be at my parents' house every time I visited. Diana is my mom's younger sister, and they've always been close, but suddenly she was there constantly. Sitting at the kitchen table with notebooks and papers spread out, having intense conversations that would immediately stop when I walked in. "Hi, Aunt Diana," I'd say, and she'd look up with this startled expression, like she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't be doing. "Oh, Chloe, I didn't hear you come in." Then she'd quickly gather up whatever papers she'd been looking at, making chit-chat about the weather or asking about my job while obviously eager to change the subject from whatever she and my mom had been discussing. The first time it happened, I didn't think much of it. The second time, I started to wonder what they could possibly be planning that required so much secrecy. The third time, I began to feel distinctly left out of something. "Are you guys planning a surprise party or something?" I asked my mom one Saturday, half joking. "A surprise party for who?" "I don't know. You and Diana just seem very conspiratorial lately." My mom laughed, but it sounded forced. "Oh, you know how Diana is. She's always got some project going. Right now she's obsessed with reorganizing her entire house. She keeps asking for my opinion on furniture arrangements." It was a reasonable explanation. Diana was known for her home improvement obsessions. Last year, it was repainting every room in her house. The year before that, she'd rearranged her living room 4 times before she was satisfied. But furniture arrangements don't usually require urgent whispered conversations that stop the moment someone else enters the room. I tried to let it go, but the weird feeling kept growing. Especially when I started catching fragments of conversations that didn't make sense in the context of home decorating. "Need to finalize the numbers by next week. Should we include the cousins from Hartford? What about seating arrangements? Chloe doesn't need to." That last fragment hit me like a slap. Chloe doesn't need to what? Know about something. Be involved in something. Be invited to something. I was standing in the hallway outside the kitchen when I heard it, having just come in from checking on the backyard progress. My mom and Diana were sitting at the table, heads bent together over what looked like lists and charts. Chloe doesn't need to worry about all these details, my mom was saying. She's already doing so much. Okay, that was innocent enough. They were probably planning some kind of thank you gesture for me, and they didn't want me to feel obligated to help organize it. That actually made sense. But then Diana said something that made my blood run cold. Are you sure she won't be upset about not being included? I mean, after everything she's done. She'll understand. She's always understood. Not being included in what I stood there in the hallway, frozen, trying to make sense of what I just heard. There was clearly some event being planned. Some event that required guest lists and seating arrangements and finalizing numbers. Some event that I was apparently not going to be included in. But that couldn't be right. Why would my parents plan a family gathering in the backyard I was paying for and not invite me? I must have misunderstood. That was the only logical explanation. I cleared my throat loudly and walked into the kitchen like I'd just arrived. "How's the planning going?" I asked with forced cheerfulness. Diana immediately flipped over the paper she'd been writing on. "Oh, just some boring family stuff, nothing interesting." Boring family stuff that required guest lists and seating charts. "Can I help with anything?" "No, no," my mom said quickly. "We've got it handled. You're already doing more than enough." There it was again. That phrase that was starting to sound less like gratitude and more like dismissal. The following week, I arrived for my usual Saturday visit to find my parents and Diana in the middle of what was clearly a heated discussion. They were standing in the backyard, looking at the nearly completed space, and their voices carried more tension than I'd heard from them in years. "Think she deserves to know," Diana was saying. "It's too late to change things now," my mom replied. "We already sent the invitations." Invitations? Sent invitations. For an event I apparently knew nothing about. They spotted me walking across the patio and immediately fell silent. The fake smiles that replaced their serious expressions were almost insulting in their transparency. "Chloe, perfect timing," my dad said with obviously forced enthusiasm. "Come see how great the fire pit looks with the new stones around it." I dutifully admired the fire pit, but my mind was racing. Sent invitations. To whom? For what? And why was Diana arguing that I deserved to know about something that night I couldn't sleep? I lay in my Boston apartment staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together the fragments of conversations and strange behavior I'd been witnessing. There was clearly some family event being planned for the newly renovated backyard. Something significant enough to require formal invitations and careful planning. Something I was being deliberately excluded from. But why I'd just spent over $10,000 creating this beautiful space for them. I'd taken time off work, coordinated with contractors, handled all the financial details. This backyard renovation was as much my project as theirs. So why did it feel like I was being shut out of whatever was going to happen in it? The next weekend brought the answer I didn't want to find. I'd driven up Saturday morning to see the final touches being put on the project. The backyard was essentially complete, and it was more beautiful than I could have imagined. The stone patio gleamed in the morning sun. The cedar pergola was draped with the upgraded bistro lights that cast everything in a warm, magical glow, even in daylight. The outdoor kitchen looked like something from a high-end resort, and the fire pit area with its built-in seating invited you to sit and stay a while. I was standing there feeling this incredible mix of pride and satisfaction when I noticed a crumpled napkin on the ground near the new outdoor dining table. I picked it up intending to throw it away, but something made me smooth it out first. It was a guest list, written in my mom's distinctive handwriting. Diana and Mark Teresa, and kids, Ryan Mom and Dad Peterson, the Hendersons, Susan, and Bill Mike, and Janet 14 names. Family members and close family friends. People who would absolutely be invited to any significant family gathering. My name was nowhere on the list. I read it 3 times, thinking maybe I'd missed it somehow. But no, 14 names for what was clearly a formal dinner party, and Chloe Morgan was not one of them. I stood there in the backyard I had paid for, holding a guest list for a party I wasn't invited to, and for the first time in weeks, everything clicked into place. The secretive conversations, the way discussion stopped when I entered rooms, Diana's comment about me deserving to know something, my parents' vague responses every time I asked about their plans for the space. They were planning to host a dinner party in this beautiful backyard without me. My first instinct was to march into the house and demand an explanation. But something held me back. Maybe it was the part of me that still couldn't quite believe what I was seeing. Maybe it was the lifetime of being told I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too quick to assume the worst. So I did what I always do when I'm confused and hurt. I rationalized. Maybe this was just a preliminary list. Maybe they were planning multiple events and this was just one of them. Maybe they were trying to surprise me with something, and this list was for a different occasion entirely. They're probably just trying not to overwhelm me, I told myself. I'm already doing so much for them. They don't want me to feel obligated to help host a party on top of everything else. That had to be it. It was actually thoughtful of them when you looked at it that way. But even as I convinced myself that there was an innocent explanation, a small voice in the back of my head kept asking the same question. If they wanted to spare me the burden of hosting, why not just ask me? Why the secrecy? Why the hushed conversations and hidden guest lists? I crumpled the napkin back up and threw it in the construction debris bag, burying it under wood scraps and packaging materials where no one would find it. That afternoon, Marcus from Greenview came by for the final walkthrough. The project was officially complete, and it was time for the final payment. "This really turned out beautifully," he said, surveying the finished space. "Your parents are going to get years of enjoyment out of this." "It's perfect," I agreed, and I meant it. Despite everything else that was going on, the backyard really was everything we'd hoped it would be. Marcus handed me the final invoice, the remaining balance plus the cost of a few last-minute additions my mom had requested. New cushions for the built-in seating, upgraded hardware for the pergola, a small side table for the fire pit area. "The total comes to $1,800, Marcus said. $1,800 on top of the $10,200 I'd already paid. My total investment in my parents' dream backyard, $12,000. $12,000 for a space I was apparently not going to be welcome to enjoy. I wrote the check anyway. What else was I going to do? The work was done. Marcus and his crew had done an incredible job, and the financial obligation was mine, regardless of whatever family drama was unfolding around it. But as I handed over that final payment, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly, but a kind of cold clarity. I had just spent $12,000 on a backyard renovation for people who were planning parties without me. "Your parents mentioned they're planning some kind of family gathering to celebrate the completion," Marcus said as he packed up his paperwork. "That should be really special." "I'm sure it will be," I replied and managed to keep my voice steady. After Marcus left, I spent another hour in the backyard with my parents, admiring the finished project. They were like excited children, pointing out details and talking about all the ways they planned to use the space. "We could have a fire every night if we wanted to," my dad said, running his hand along the smooth stone edge of the fire pit. "And the outdoor kitchen is going to make entertaining so much easier," my mom added. "We could have people over for dinner and never have to go inside." They talked about entertaining and having people over like it was the most natural thing in the world. They just didn't talk about who those people might be, or more specifically, whether I would be one of them. As the sun started to set, my dad put his arm around my shoulders and looked out over the transformed space. "You really outdid yourself, kiddo," he said, and his voice was thick with emotion. "This is more beautiful than anything we ever imagined." "It's for all of us," I said, and I meant it. Despite the guest list, despite the secretive conversations, despite the growing certainty that something was very wrong with this picture, I still meant it. This was supposed to be our family space, a place where we could all gather and make new memories together. The fact that my parents seemed to have different ideas about who all of us included was a problem I wasn't ready to face yet. I drove back to Boston that night with a head full of questions and a heart full of doubts. The backyard was finished, and it was perfect. But something about this whole situation was starting to feel very, very wrong. My phone buzzed with a text message as I was getting ready for bed. It was from Leo. "You seriously don't know, do you?" I stared at that message for a long time before typing back. "Know what?" But Leo didn't respond. The message just sat there on my screen, taunting me with its implications. Know what, Leo? What was I supposed to know? What was everyone else in my family apparently aware of that I was being kept in the dark about? I fell asleep that night with my phone in my hand, waiting for an answer that never came. But deep down, I was starting to suspect that the answer, when it finally arrived, was going to change everything I thought I knew about my place in this family. And I was right. Have you ever had one of those moments where your entire reality shifts in the span of a single phone call, where everything you thought you knew about your life suddenly gets turned upside down by a conversation that lasts less than 5 minutes? That's what happened to me on a Saturday morning in early July. I was in my apartment, sitting on my couch in my pajamas with a cup of coffee and my laptop catching up on some work emails. It was one of those rare, peaceful mornings where I didn't have anywhere to be or anything urgent to do. The sun was streaming through my windows, and I was actually feeling pretty good about life. The backyard project was complete and looked incredible. My parents seemed happier than they'd been in years. I'd successfully pulled off this major gift without going into debt or compromising my own financial security. I was even starting to think about rebooking that Europe trip for the fall. Then my phone rang. "Chloe, it's Aunt Diana." "Hey, Aunt Diana, what's up?" "I'm just calling to check on the final details for tomorrow night. Are you planning to bring a +1 to the dinner?" I paused my coffee cup halfway to my lips. "What dinner?" The silence on the other end of the line stretched on for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 3 or 4 seconds. "The family dinner, tomorrow night, at your parents' house." "I don't know anything about a family dinner tomorrow night." Another pause. This one longer and somehow more loaded with meaning. "Oh." Diana's voice had changed completely. The casual planning mode tone was gone, replaced by something that sounded like panic. "Oh no, Elaine didn't tell you." My stomach dropped. "Tell me what about the dinner party tomorrow night in the new backyard. It's just immediate family, nothing personal. We just wanted to keep it small for the first event." And she was talking faster now, the words tumbling out like she was trying to explain away something that couldn't be explained away. "Aunt Diana," I interrupted her rambling, "are you saying there's a family dinner party happening tomorrow night at my parents' house in the backyard I paid for and I wasn't invited?" "It's not that you weren't invited exactly. It's just immediate family. Your parents thought it would be better to keep the first gathering small. Less pressure, you understand?" I didn't understand. I didn't understand at all. Immediate family, Diana. I'm their daughter. "Of course you are, sweetheart. Of course you are. This is just a misunderstanding. I'm sure your mother meant to call you. She's been so busy with the planning, and you know how scattered she gets when she's organizing events." But even as Diana tried to smooth things over, I could hear the weakness in her own voice. She didn't believe what she was saying any more than I did. "Who's coming to this immediate family dinner?" I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "Well, let's see. Teresa and the kids, of course, and Ryan, and Mark and I will be there. Your parents invited the Petersons. From next door, they're practically family, after all these years. And a few others. Teresa, my cousin Teresa, who lives 2 hours away and sees my parents maybe 3 times a year. She was immediate family, but I wasn't. Ryan, my brother Ryan, who I'd understood was immediate family, obviously, but apparently immediate family was a category that included him and excluded me. The Petersons, the neighbors, practically family. More family than me, apparently. I have to go, I said. Chloe, wait. Let me call your mother and sort this out. Don't. The word came out sharper than I intended. Don't call my mother. I'll handle this myself. I hung up before Diana could say anything else. I sat there on my couch phone in my hand, trying to process what had just happened. My parents were throwing a dinner party. Tomorrow night. In the backyard, I had paid $12,000 to create. And not only was I not invited, but no one had even bothered to tell me it was happening. Immediate family only, as if I wasn't immediate family, as if the daughter who had just funded their dream renovation was somehow less immediate than the cousin who visits 3 times a year. My hands were shaking as I typed out a text to my mom. Diana just called asking about my +1 for tomorrow night's dinner. What dinner? I sent it and stared at my phone waiting for a response. The little delivered notification appeared immediately, then changed to read about 30 seconds later. Then nothing. I waited 5 minutes, then 10, then I sent another text. Mom, read, no response. I called her. It went straight to voicemail. I called my dad. He answered on the 3rd ring. Hi, sweetheart. Dad, what's this about a dinner party tomorrow night? A pause. Your mother was supposed to talk to you about that. Well, she didn't. Diana just called asking about my +1 for a party I knew nothing about. Chloe, his voice had that careful tone he gets when he's trying to manage a situation he doesn't want to deal with. It's just a small gathering. Nothing formal. We didn't want to add more stress to your plate when you've already done so much. Add stress to my plate. Dad, it's a dinner party. In the backyard I paid for. How is being invited to that stressful... We just thought it would be easier to keep this first event simple. Family only. We'll do something bigger later in the summer, maybe for your birthday. Family only. There it was again. Dad, I am family. Of course you are. Don't be dramatic. Don't be dramatic. Those 3 words hit me like a slap. Don't be dramatic. Don't make a big deal out of being excluded from a family gathering in the space you funded. Don't have feelings about being deliberately left out of something important. When is this bigger gathering supposed to happen? I asked. We were thinking September, after things settle down a bit. September, 3 months away. They were going to enjoy their beautiful new backyard all summer long, hosting dinner parties and family gatherings, and I was supposed to wait until September for my invitation. I have to go, I said. Chloe, please don't make this into something it's not. But I was already hanging up. I sat there for a moment, feeling like I was in some kind of alternate reality. This couldn't actually be happening. My parents couldn't actually be throwing a family dinner party without me. There had to be some explanation I wasn't seeing. So I did what any reasonable person would do in 2025. I checked Facebook. I opened the app and went to my mom's profile. The first post I saw made my blood run cold. So excited for our family dinner party tomorrow night. The new backyard is going to be perfect for entertaining. Can't wait to see everyone. Posted 2 hours ago. 14 likes already, including several from family members I hadn't spoken to in months. I scrolled down to see who had liked it. Teresa, Diana, Ryan, the Petersons, my second cousins from Hartford, who I didn't even know my parents were still in touch with. Then I saw the comments. Can't wait to see the new space. Thanks for including us in the inaugural dinner. Teresa. So, looking forward to it? Should I bring my famous potato salad? Diana. The backyard looks incredible in the photos. You guys outdid yourselves. Mrs. Peterson. They were all talking about this dinner party like it was common knowledge, like it was something they'd all been looking forward to for weeks. I clicked on Diana's profile and scrolled down until I found what I was looking for. A post from 3 days ago. Getting so excited for Saturday's dinner at Robert and Elaine's. Their new backyard is absolutely stunning. Going to be such a special evening with the family. 23 likes. Comments from people talking about what they were planning to bring, what time they were arriving, how much they were looking forward to it. I opened Teresa's profile next. Sure enough, there was a post from yesterday. Kids are so excited for dinner at Aunt Elaine and Uncle Robert's tomorrow. They keep asking if they can use the fire pit. Family time is the best time. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the more profiles. Ryan had posted a photo of a bottle of wine with the caption, "Picked up something special for tomorrow night's dinner. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for always bringing the family together." Everyone knew, everyone had been invited, everyone was excited, everyone except me. I clicked back to my mom's post and read through the comments again, looking for any mention of me. Surely someone would ask where I was going to be. Surely someone would comment about how I must be so proud to see the family enjoying the space I had created. But there was nothing. No one mentioned me at all. It was like I didn't exist. That's when something inside me broke. I started crying. Not the gentle tears of disappointment or hurt feelings, but the kind of ugly sobbing tears that come from somewhere deep in your chest. The kind that make it hard to breathe and impossible to think clearly. I cried for the $12,000 I'd spent creating a space I wasn't welcome to enjoy. I cried for all the weekends I'd driven up to check on the progress, thinking I was contributing to something beautiful for our family. I cried for every time I'd told friends about the amazing gift I was giving my parents, how proud I was to finally be in a position to do something meaningful for them. But mostly, I cried because this wasn't really about the dinner party. This was about a pattern I'd been too blind or too hopeful to see clearly. How many times had I been the one to reach out to plan visits to remember birthdays and anniversaries? How many times had I been the one to offer help to solve problems, to be the reliable daughter who could always be counted on? And how many times had I been quietly excluded from the things that mattered? How many conversations had stopped when I entered the room? How many plans had been made without me? How many times had I been told I was too sensitive or too dramatic when I noticed that something felt off? I thought about my cousin Teresa, who saw my parents 3 times a year but was considered immediate family. I thought about the neighbors, who were practically family and had earned a spot at the inaugural dinner. I thought about my brother Ryan, who never called, never visited unless it was a holiday, never offered to help with anything, but who was posting on Facebook about family dinners, like he was the most devoted son in the world. And then I thought about me, Chloe the fixer, Chloe who paid for the backyard, Chloe who was too much trouble to include in the first gathering, but would be welcome to join the celebration in September after everyone else had already enjoyed the space. I was sitting there on my couch, mascara running down my face, when my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Leo. "I think you should know how they really see you." I stared at that message through my tears. How they really see you. Not how they say they see you. Not how they pretend to see you, but how they really see you. "What do you mean?" I typed back. The response came quickly. "Can I call you?" I wiped my face and tried to pull myself together. Yeah, my phone rang within seconds. "Chloe, I'm so sorry," Leo said without any preamble. "I thought you knew about the dinner. I thought they'd told you and you just weren't going for some reason." "They didn't tell me." "That's so messed up. I can't believe they did this to you." "Leo, what did you mean about how they really see me?" There was a long pause. "Are you sure you want to know?" "I need to know." "Okay." He took a deep breath. "Look, I love your parents. You know I do. But the way they talk about you when you're not around, it's not great." My stomach clenched. "What do they say?" "It's not what they say exactly. It's more like how they say it. Like they'll talk about how independent you are, how you don't really need family the way other people do. How you're so focused on your career and your life in Boston that you've kind of outgrown the family. I drive up there every weekend. I know you do, but they frame it like you're doing them a favor, not like you actually want to be there. Like you're this successful city person who's being nice to the small town relatives." "That's not how I feel at all." "I know it's not, but it's how they've convinced themselves you feel. And I think it makes it easier for them to exclude you from things." "What do you mean?" "Well, if they believe you don't really want to be part of family stuff anyway, then they don't have to feel guilty about not including you. They can tell themselves they're actually doing you a favor by not bothering you with family obligations. I felt like I was going to be sick. But I just spent $12,000 on their backyard, and they're grateful for that. But they see it as you showing off your success, not as you trying to contribute to the family. Showing off? That's not what I think, Leo said quickly. That's just how they talk about it. Like you were trying to prove how well you're doing, not like you were trying to do something nice for them. I couldn't speak. The room was spinning, and I felt like I might throw up. Chloe, you still there? Yeah, I whispered. I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't have said anything. No, I needed to hear it. For what it's worth, I think they're wrong about you. I think they've always been wrong about you. You're the most generous person in this family, and they take advantage of that. Why didn't you say something before? I tried to drop hints. That comment about the dinner a few weeks ago, I was hoping you'd ask more questions. And honestly, I wasn't sure if they were right. Maybe you really didn't want to be bothered with family stuff. I know you're busy with work and everything. I'm never too busy for family. I know that now, and I should have known it before. We sat in silence for a moment. What should I do? I asked. I don't know, Leo said. But whatever you decide, I've got your back. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment for a long time, trying to process everything I'd learned. My parents saw me as someone who had outgrown the family. They thought I was showing off when I tried to help them. They excluded me from family gatherings because they'd convinced themselves I didn't really want to be there anyway. And the worst part was I could see how they'd arrived at that conclusion. I did live in Boston. I did have a demanding job. I was focused on my career. I had delayed gratification for years to get to where I was professionally and financially. But none of that meant I didn't want to be part of my family. None of that meant I didn't value our relationships or want to be included in important moments. I had worked so hard to be someone they could be proud of, someone who could contribute meaningfully to the family. And somehow, in achieving those goals, I had become someone they saw as too good for them, too busy for them, too independent to need them. The irony was devastating. In trying to become the daughter who could finally give back to her family, I had apparently become the daughter who no longer belonged to it. I looked at my phone and saw that I had 17 unread text messages. I scrolled through them quickly. Most were from family members who had apparently heard from Diana that there had been some kind of misunderstanding about the dinner party. Hope we can get this sorted out, Teresa. I'm sure it's just a scheduling mix-up. Sign, Aunt Susan. Looking forward to seeing you soon. Ryan, all of them were trying to smooth things over without actually addressing what had happened. No one was saying, I can't believe they didn't invite you, or this is really messed up. They were all just hoping the awkwardness would go away so they could enjoy their dinner party without feeling guilty about my exclusion. There was one message from my mom. We need to talk. Can you call me? I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to call her immediately to hear her explanation, to give her a chance to make this right. But another part of me knew that whatever she said would just be more of the same. More rationalization about why excluding me was actually the considerate thing to do. More suggestions that I was being too sensitive or too dramatic. So I did something I'd never done before in my relationship with my parents. I turned off my phone. I was done being the understanding daughter. I was done making excuses for behavior that hurt me. I was done pretending that being excluded from my own family was somehow for my own good. I had spent $12,000 creating a beautiful space for people who didn't think I belonged in it. And for the first time in my life, I was going to stop pretending that was okay. But as I sat there in the silence of my apartment, I realized that this was just the beginning. Because now I had to figure out what came next. How do you rebuild a relationship with people who fundamentally misunderstand who you are? How do you reclaim your place in a family that has decided you don't really belong there? And most importantly, how do you forgive people who have broken your heart while insisting they were doing you a favor? I didn't have answers to any of those questions yet. But I knew one thing for certain. I was done being the daughter who was too grateful for scraps of attention to demand the full meal of love and inclusion I deserved. It was time to start setting some boundaries. And tomorrow night, while my family enjoyed their dinner party in the backyard I was going to start figuring out exactly what those boundaries needed to look like. After I turned my phone back on an hour later, I had 37 missed calls and 42 text messages. But before I dealt with any of that chaos, I needed to do something I'd never done before in my life. I needed to take back some control. I went to my laptop and pulled up the file folder where I keep all my important documents, bank statements, tax returns, insurance policies. And right there in a folder labeled Backyard Project were all the contracts and receipts from the renovation. I opened the main contract with Greenview Landscaping and scrolled down to the signature section. There, it was clear as day. Chloe Morgan, primary contractor. Robert and Elaine Morgan, property owners. Secondary signatures for permission only. Everything was in my name. The permits, the payments, the warranty information. I was the client of record for this project, which meant I still had some power here. I pulled up my banking app and looked at my recent transactions. Marcus from Greenview had said there would be one final payment due after the maintenance period ended in 2 weeks, $1,800 for the final cleanup touch-up work and the first seasonal maintenance of the landscaping. I had already set aside the money in a separate account, planning to have it automatically transferred when the time came. But looking at that pending payment now, I realized something important. If I wasn't immediate family, if I was just the generous benefactor who didn't really belong at family gatherings, then maybe I should start acting like one. I opened my email and composed a message to Marcus. Hi, Marcus. I need to put a hold on the final payment and maintenance contract for the Morgan project. Please suspend all scheduled work until further notice. I'll be in touch about next steps. Thanks, Chloe. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then, I went back to my banking app and froze the account I'd set up for ongoing backyard maintenance. $1,200 that I'd planned to use for seasonal upkeep, plant replacement, and minor repairs. Money that would keep their beautiful new space looking perfect for years to come. Not anymore. If they wanted to enjoy their family-only dinner parties in the space I'd created, they could figure out how to maintain it themselves. I picked up my phone and scrolled through all the frantic messages from my family. Most of them were variations on the same theme. Please call me back. We need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. My mom had sent 17 messages progressing from apologetic to frustrated to angry. Sweetheart, please call me. I can explain everything. Chloe, you're not answering. Please don't shut me out. I understand you're upset, but this isn't as big a deal as you're making it. You're being dramatic. Just call me. Fine. If you want to act like a child, that's your choice. That last message was sent 20 minutes ago. I could practically hear her voice saying it, that sharp tone she gets when she's decided that someone else's feelings are inconvenient. Instead of calling anyone back, I composed a single text message and sent it to both my parents. If I'm not immediate family, I'll stop funding family events. The final payment and maintenance contract for the backyard have been suspended. Let's talk when you're ready to be honest. I sent it and immediately turned my phone to silent. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I took a long bath, ordered Thai food, and watched a movie. I acted like a person whose Saturday night didn't revolve around managing other people's emotions. It felt strange and terrifying and oddly liberating. Around 9 p.m., my phone started lighting up again. This time it wasn't just my parents. Diana was calling. Ryan was calling. Even my cousin Teresa, who never calls me unless she needs something, was trying to reach me. The family grapevine was clearly working overtime. I ignored all of it and went to bed early. Sunday morning, I woke up to find that the calls had continued throughout the night. My voicemail box was full. I deleted all the messages without listening to them and got dressed to go for a run. I needed to clear my head, and there's something about the rhythm of running that helps me think through complicated problems. Plus, I knew that sooner or later I was going to have to face my family. I wanted to make sure I was prepared for that conversation. I was about 2 miles into my run when I realized what I was really afraid of. Not the confrontation itself, but the possibility that they would somehow convince me I was wrong. That they would find a way to make this my fault, to make me the difficult daughter who was causing drama over nothing. Because that's what always happened. Whenever I tried to set a boundary or express hurt feelings somehow, I ended up being the one apologizing. Somehow my needs became unreasonable, and my feelings became too much to deal with. But this time felt different. This time, I had something concrete to point to. A dinner party I wasn't invited to. A guest list with my name missing. Social media posts celebrating an event I knew nothing about. This wasn't about me being too sensitive. This was about me being actively excluded from something I had made possible. I was so lost in thought that I almost didn't notice the car following me. But after the third turn, I realized that the same blue Honda had been behind me for the entire second half of my run. When I stopped at a red light, the car pulled up next to me and the window rolled down. Chloe. It was my brother Ryan. He looked like he hadn't slept. His hair was messy and he was wearing the same clothes he'd had on in his Facebook photos from yesterday. Ryan, what are you doing here? I've been calling you all night. We need to talk. I'm in the middle of a run. Then I'll wait. I'll follow you home. That's creepy, Ryan. Everything's creepy when you won't answer your phone. The light turned green and other cars started honking at us to move. Fine, I called out. Follow me home, but I'm not having this conversation in the street. 20 minutes later, I was letting Ryan into my apartment. He looked around like he'd never been there before, which was accurate since he'd never bothered to visit me in Boston. Nice place, he said awkwardly. Thanks. What do you want, Ryan? Mom and Dad are freaking out. They think you've lost your mind. Because I canceled the contractor payment. Because you're acting like they committed some unforgivable crime by not inviting you to one dinner party. There it was. The family party line. I was overreacting to one dinner party. Ryan, sit down. We need to talk. He perched on the edge of my couch like he was ready to bolt at any moment. When was the last time you visited Mom and Dad without it being a holiday? I asked. I don't know. Why does that matter? When was the last time you called them just to check in? Chloe, what's your point? When was the last time you offered to help them with anything financially or otherwise? Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Not everyone has your kind of money. This isn't about money. It's about effort. It's about showing up. It's about being present in their lives. I am present in their lives. You posted on Facebook about last night's dinner, like you're the most devoted son in the world, but you live an hour away and you see them 4 times a year. So I drive up from Boston every weekend. I call them twice a week. I just spent $12,000 creating a beautiful outdoor space for them. And somehow you're immediate family and I'm not. Ryan was quiet for a moment. You really spent $12,000. $12,200 actually. Holy shit, Chloe. Language, he laughed despite himself. You sound like Mom. Don't change the subject. Look, I think they messed up, okay? I think they should have invited you. But you're making this into World War III over one dinner party. This isn't about one dinner party. This is about a pattern. This is about me being taken for granted and then excluded when it's convenient. What pattern? I stared at him. Ryan, do you really not see it? See how they treat me differently than they treat you. How I'm expected to be the responsible one, the helpful one, the one who solves problems and never needs anything in return. But when it comes to actually being included in family stuff, I'm somehow less important than cousins who live 2 hours away. Ryan was quiet for a long time. I never thought about it like that. Of course you didn't, because it works out great for you. You get to be the beloved son who shows up for holidays and gets celebrated for minimum effort. Meanwhile, I'm the daughter who gives and gives and gives, and then gets told she's being dramatic when she notices she's being left out. That's not fair. Which part? The part where you make it sound like I don't care about mom and dad. I'm not saying you don't care. I'm saying you don't have to prove that you care the way I do. Your love is taken for granted. Mine has to be earned over and over again. My doorbell rang before Ryan could respond. Are you expecting someone? He asked. I looked through the peephole and my heart sank. My parents were standing in the hallway outside my apartment. My mom was holding what looked like a casserole dish and my dad was carrying a bouquet of flowers. It's mom and dad, I told Ryan. Oh, thank God. Now we can all talk and get this sorted out. But I wasn't ready for this conversation. I wasn't prepared to handle my parents' emotions and Ryan's obliviousness and my own hurt feelings all at the same time. The doorbell rang again, followed by knocking. Chloe, we know you're in there, my mom called through the door. Your car is in the parking lot. More knocking louder this time. Chloe, please open the door, my dad added. We just want to talk. I took a deep breath and opened the door. My parents looked terrible. My mom's eyes were red and puffy, and my dad looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. But there was something else in their expressions that I didn't like. A kind of determined righteousness, like they'd come here to set me straight. Finally, my mom said, pushing past me into the apartment. We've been calling you for hours. I know. I got your messages. And you ignored them. I needed time to think. My mom set the casserole dish on my kitchen counter with more force than necessary. Well, we need to talk. This nonsense has gone on long enough. What nonsense? The drama, the threats, canceling payments like some kind of vindictive teenager. And there it was. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement of what they'd done wrong, but an accusation that I was the problem. Mom, you threw a dinner party without inviting me, in the backyard I paid for. It was a small gathering. We didn't want to burden you. Burden me with what? Free food and family time. You're always so busy with work. You're always stressed about something. We thought you'd appreciate not having to worry about another obligation. Since when is spending time with my family an obligation? My dad stepped forward. Sweetheart, I think there's been a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? We never meant to exclude you. We just thought you'd prefer to have your own celebration. Something more suited to your lifestyle. My lifestyle? As if being successful meant I no longer wanted to eat dinner with my family. What exactly do you think my lifestyle is? My parents exchanged one of their looks. Well, my mom said carefully, you're very focused on your career. You live in the city, you have different interests than the rest of us. Different interests like what? Expensive restaurants, cultural events, things we wouldn't really fit into. I stared at her. Mom, you think I'm too good for family barbecues. That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said. Ryan was sitting on my couch looking like he wanted to disappear. You used me, I said quietly. Not just this time. Every time. That is not true, my mom said, her voice rising. We have never used you. Really? When was the last time you visited me in Boston? Silence. When was the last time you called to ask how I was doing without needing something? More silence. When was the last time you included me in family plans without me having to invite myself? You're being ridiculous, my mom snapped. We include you in everything. Except dinner parties, except the conversation about planning them, except the Facebook posts celebrating them. That was an oversight. An oversight that lasted weeks, Mom. An oversight that involved sending invitations to everyone but me. An oversight that included posting about it on social media where I could see exactly how much I wasn't wanted. My dad cleared his throat. Chloe, I think you're making this bigger than it needs to be. Let me ask you something, Dad. If Ryan had spent $12,000 renovating your backyard, would you have thrown a party without inviting him? That's different. How Ryan wouldn't have, he's not as independent as you are. There it was, the word they'd been dancing around. Independent. As if being capable meant I didn't need love. As if being successful meant I didn't want to belong. I'm not your ATM, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. I'm your daughter. Of course you're our daughter, my mom said, but you have to understand, we never know what you want from us. You're so self-sufficient, so successful. We feel like we don't have anything to offer you. You could offer me inclusion. You could offer me the assumption that I want to be part of this family. You are part of this family. Then why do I have to pay for the privilege? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. My mom's face crumpled. That's not fair. Isn't it? I pay for renovations. I drive up every weekend. I remember birthdays and anniversaries. I solve problems and offer help and never ask for anything in return. And in exchange, I get to be the family member who's too successful to need actual family. We don't think that, my dad said weakly. Yes, you do. You've convinced yourselves that I've outgrown you, that I don't really want to be here, and that makes it easier to exclude me without feeling guilty about it. That's when my doorbell rang again. We all froze. I wasn't expecting anyone else, and my parents looked just as confused as I felt. I opened the door to find Leo standing in the hallway holding a bag of bagels and 2 cups of coffee. Hey, he said, taking in the scene. Wow, this is awkward timing. Leo, what are you doing here? I was worried about you. I brought breakfast. He looked past me at my parents and Ryan. But I see you're having a family meeting. Actually, I said, stepping aside to let him in. Your timing is perfect. Leo set the bagels and coffee on my kitchen counter and turned to face my parents. Aunt Elaine, Uncle Robert, Ryan. Leo, my mom said stiffly. This is a private family conversation. Yeah, well, family conversations are kind of what got us into this mess. Excuse me, Leo looked at me and I nodded. I was done protecting people from uncomfortable truths. They've been doing this for years, Leo said to my parents. Chloe just finally called it out. Doing what? My dad asked, taking advantage of her. Making her feel like she has to earn her place in this family while everyone else gets to belong automatically. That's not true, my mom protested. Isn't it? When was the last time you guys drove to Boston to see Chloe? Up with silence. When was the last time you planned a family event and called her first to check her schedule? More silence. When was the last time you did something nice for her without her having to ask for it or pay for it herself? The silence stretched on so long it became uncomfortable. You see her as the successful daughter who doesn't need anything, Leo continued. But what you don't see is that she needs the same thing everyone needs. She needs to feel wanted. She needs to feel like she belongs. And instead of giving her that, you've made her feel like she has to buy her way into your affection. That's enough, my mom said sharply. This is between us and Chloe. No, it's not, I said. Because Leo is the only person in this family who's been honest about what's been happening. I looked at my parents, really looked at them, and for the first time I saw them clearly, not as the people I'd been trying so hard to please, but as the people who had been taking my efforts for granted while convincing themselves I didn't really need them. I think you should leave, I said quietly. Chloe, please, my dad said. Let's work this out. We can work it out when you're ready to admit what you did wrong, and when you're ready to apologize for it, and when you're ready to treat me like a daughter instead of a convenient ATM. My mom's face was red with anger. Fine. If that's how you want to be, fine, but don't expect us to come crawling back when you realize how good you had it. Mom, Ryan said quietly, maybe we should go. For the first time all morning, my brother had said something useful. My parents gathered up their flowers and casserole dish and headed for the door. My mom paused in the doorway. "I hope you're happy," she said. "You've gotten exactly what you wanted. You're all alone." But as the door closed behind them, I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't alone. Leo was there making coffee and arranging bagels on plates like this was the most natural thing in the world. Ryan was there too, looking shell-shocked, but also like he was finally starting to understand something important. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. Not because I'd paid for the privilege, not because I'd earned it through endless giving, but because the people who were there actually wanted me there. It was a strange feeling. Unfamiliar, but not unpleasant. It was the feeling of being chosen, rather than tolerated. And I realized that maybe that was worth $12,000 and a really uncomfortable family confrontation. Even if it meant starting over and rebuilding everything I thought I knew about what family was supposed to feel like. 3 days after the confrontation at my apartment, Ryan called and asked if he could come back to Boston. Not for our parents, he said, but for himself. He needed to understand something that was bothering him. I almost said no. I was emotionally exhausted, and the last thing I wanted was to rehash the same arguments with someone who still didn't get it. But there was something different in his voice. Less defensive, more curious. Like he was actually ready to listen instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. We met at a coffee shop near my office on Wednesday evening. Ryan looked tired, like he'd been doing some uncomfortable thinking over the past few days. "I've been replaying that conversation at your apartment," he said without any preamble. "And I keep coming back to something you said." "What's that?" "About how your love has to be earned and mine is just taken for granted." I stirred my latte and waited for him to continue. I didn't want to believe it at first. But then I started thinking about all the family stuff that's happened over the years. And I realized you're right. "About what specifically?" "About everything." Ryan ran his hands through his hair. "Chloe, I can't remember the last time Mom and Dad asked me to contribute to anything. Money, planning, logistics, nothing. They just assume I'll show up and enjoy whatever someone else has arranged." "Usually me." "Yeah, usually you." He looked embarrassed. "And I never questioned it because it worked out great for me. I got to be the fun son who shows up for holidays and gets praised for minimum effort." I'd been waiting my entire adult life for someone in my family to acknowledge this dynamic. Hearing it from Ryan finally felt like a weight lifting off my chest. "Do you remember Teresa's wedding 3 years ago?" he continued. "The one where Mom asked me to coordinate all the family hotel bookings and arrange transportation for the elderly relatives?" "Yeah. And I just showed up the day of the wedding and everyone acted like I was such a great brother for being there. Meanwhile, you'd spent weeks organizing everything to make sure the family looked good and everyone was taken care of." "I remember. And I let you do all that work while I got equal credit for just existing." "You did." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "That's messed up." "Yeah, it is. And it's not just the big stuff, is it? It's every birthday, every holiday, every family crisis. You're the one who remembers, who plans, who shows up with solutions. And somehow, that just became your job, while everyone else got to coast." I felt tears prick at my eyes. Not sad tears, but the kind that come from being truly seen and understood for the first time. "I didn't realize how much you've carried for this family," Ryan said. "And I didn't realize how alone that must have made you feel." "It did. I'm sorry, Chloe. I'm really, really sorry." "Thank you for saying that." "Whoa, what do you need from me now?" The question caught me off guard. When was the last time someone in my family had asked what I needed instead of telling me what they needed from me? "I need you to back me up when I set boundaries. I need you to notice when I'm being taken for granted and speak up about it. And I need you to start carrying some of the load instead of letting it all fall on me." "I can do that." "Can you really? Because it's going to mean being uncomfortable sometimes. It's going to mean calling out Mom and Dad when they're being unfair, even when it's easier to just let things slide." "I can do that," Ryan repeated, and this time I believed him. We talked for another hour, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had an ally in my own family. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. The conversation with my parents took longer to arrange. They called several times over the next week, but I wasn't ready to talk to them yet. I needed time to think about what I wanted to say and what outcomes I could live with. Part of me was tempted to just cut them off entirely, to take my hurt feelings and my $12,000 and build a new life that didn't include people who had proven they couldn't appreciate me properly. But another part of me wasn't ready to give up on them yet. These were my parents. They had raised me, supported me through college, celebrated my successes. They weren't evil people, just people who had developed some really problematic patterns over the years. The question was whether they were capable of changing those patterns, or if this was just who they were going to be forever. I finally agreed to meet them the following Saturday, but not at their house. I suggested a quiet restaurant halfway between Boston and their town, neutral territory where none of us would have the home field advantage. They arrived exactly on time, looking nervous and uncertain. My mom was carrying a gift bag, which immediately put me on edge. I wasn't interested in being bought off with presents. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," my dad said as we sat down. "I'm here because I love you both, but I need you to understand that some things have to change." My mom set the gift bag on the table between us. "We brought you something, just a small token of our appreciation for everything you've done." "Mom, I don't want gifts. I want acknowledgement." "We do acknowledge everything you've done. We're grateful for it. Being grateful isn't the same as treating me like an equal member of this family." The server came to take our drink orders, giving us all a moment to collect ourselves. "We've been thinking a lot about what you said last week," my dad began once we were alone again. "About feeling excluded and taken for granted. And we think there might be some truth to it. Some truth to it. Not, 'You were absolutely right,' or 'We owe you a huge apology,' but there might be some truth to it." I took a deep breath. "Dad, let me ask you something. If someone threw a dinner party at a venue you paid for and didn't invite you, how would you feel?" "I'd be hurt. And if they then told you it was for your own good because you were too busy to be bothered with family obligations, how would that make you feel?" "I'd be angry." "And if you found out about the party by accident through someone else who was surprised you didn't know about it, what would you think?" My dad was quiet for a long moment. "I'd think they didn't want me there." "Exactly," my mom finally spoke up. "We didn't mean to exclude you, Chloe. We honestly thought we were being considerate." "Mom, intentions don't erase actions." "What do you mean?" "I mean, it doesn't matter what you meant to do. What matters is what you actually did. And what you did was plan a family gathering without me send invitations to everyone but me, post about it on social media where I could see it and then act surprised when I was heard about it. We didn't think it through properly." "No, you didn't. And that's exactly the problem." The server returned with our drinks, and we ordered food, while the tension hung heavy over our table. "What do you want from us?" my mom asked once we were alone again. "I want you to see me as a daughter who wants to be included, not as a benefactor who's too good for family events. I want you to consider my feelings before making decisions that affect me, and I want you to stop taking my help for granted." "We don't take your help for granted." "Yes, you do." I pulled out my phone and showed them a note I'd written. "In the past year, I've driven to your house 26 times. You've driven to my apartment 0 times. I've organized or contributed to 5 family events. You've invited me to plan exactly one of them. I've offered financial help for 3 different projects. You've offered to help me with exactly nothing." The numbers were stark when laid out like that. "We didn't realize," my dad said quietly. "That's the problem, Dad. You don't notice how one-sided this relationship has become because it works out well for you. What can we do to fix it?" Finally, the question I'd been waiting for. "First, you need to acknowledge that you messed up. Really acknowledge it, not just admit there might be some truth to my feelings." My parents looked at each other. "We messed up," my dad said. "We've taken your help for granted, And we've made assumptions about what you want instead of asking you directly. And and we excluded you from something you should have been included in, my mom added. We hurt your feelings and we're sorry. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than anything they'd said so far. Second, I want you to cancel that dinner party. Cancel it. Yes, cancel it. If it was really about celebrating the backyard, then it should include the person who made the backyard possible. But we already invited everyone. Then uninvite them. Tell them there was a scheduling conflict and you're moving it to September instead. September. September, when you were planning that bigger celebration for my birthday anyway. Combine the events. Make it a proper family reunion where everyone is actually invited. My parents were quiet processing this. And third, I continued, if we're going to have a family reunion in September, I want to help plan it. Not just pay for it, not just show up and smile, but actually be involved in the decision-making process. Of course, my dad said quickly. We'd love your help planning it. I'm not talking about the kind of help where you make all the decisions and then ask me to execute them. I'm talking about being included from the beginning, being consulted about dates and guest lists and menus. We can do that. Can you really? Because it's going to require you to think of me differently, not as the daughter who's too successful to need family, but as the daughter who wants to be part of this family as much as anyone else. My mom reached across the table and took my hand. We never wanted you to feel like you didn't belong. But I did feel that way. And if you want things to be different going forward, you need to actively include me, not just assume I'll invite myself to everything. We understand. Do you? Because this isn't just about one dinner party. This is about changing patterns that have been building for years. We understand, my dad repeated, and we want to do better. Our food arrived and we spent the rest of lunch talking about concrete ways to rebuild our relationship. Regular phone calls that weren't about crisis management, planned visits in both directions, family events where the planning responsibilities were shared instead of automatically falling to me. It wasn't a magical fix, everything conversation. There were still hurt feelings to work through and trust to rebuild, but it felt like a genuine beginning. 2 weeks later, my parents sent out a group email canceling the July dinner and announcing a new date in September for a combined backyard celebration and family reunion. They asked everyone to save the date and mentioned that I would be helping to coordinate the details. I spent the next month working with them to plan an event that actually felt like a family celebration. We created a shared group chat for planning scheduled regular check-in calls and divided up responsibilities based on people's strengths and availability rather than just dumping everything on whoever was most likely to say yes. The September gathering was everything the July dinner should have been. 35 family members and close friends, a perfect late summer evening, and a backyard that looked like something from a magazine. But the best part wasn't the beautiful setting or the delicious food. The best part was feeling like I actually belonged there. When it came time for toast, my dad stood up with his beer raised and looked directly at me. Before we eat, I want to say something about this beautiful space we're all enjoying tonight. This backyard exists because of Chloe's generosity. Not just her financial contribution, but her vision, her planning, and her dedication to making something special for this family. We owe her more than thanks. We owe her recognition and respect, and the kind of love that doesn't take her efforts for granted. He paused, his voice getting a little thick with emotion. Chloe, you've been carrying more than your share of keeping this family connected for years, and we haven't always appreciated that. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we gave you plenty of reasons to. The applause that followed felt different from any applause I'd ever received. It wasn't just appreciation for a task completed or a problem solved. It was recognition of my value as a person, not just as a convenient source of solutions. After the party, as we were cleaning up, my mom pulled me aside. I know we still have work to do, she said, but tonight felt like what family is supposed to feel like. It did? Are we going to be okay? I think so, as long as you keep remembering that I'm not just the daughter who fixes things. I'm the daughter who wants to belong. Well, remember, 2 weeks later, I was finally on that plane to Europe. Not as a consolation prize for missing out on family events, but as a celebration of setting boundaries and rebuilding relationships on my own terms. I spent 2 weeks wandering through London and Paris and Rome, taking pictures and eating amazing food and feeling proud of myself for the first time in years. From a cafe in Paris, I sent my parents a postcard. It was a picture of the Eiffel Tower at sunset. And on the back, I wrote, "Thanks for learning how to respect me. Love, Chloe." I meant it. It had taken a $12,000 backyard renovation and a family crisis to get there, but we had finally figured out how to see each other clearly. And you know what? That felt like the best money I'd ever spent, because sometimes you have to be willing to lose the family you thought you had in order to build the family you actually deserve. Sometimes you have to stop being grateful for scraps and start demanding the full meal of love and inclusion and respect. It's scary to set those kinds of boundaries. It's terrifying to risk relationships that matter to you. But what I learned is that relationships built on guilt and obligation and one-sided effort aren't really relationships at all. They're just habits that keep you trapped in patterns that don't serve anyone. The family I have now isn't perfect. We still have conversations that get uncomfortable, and we still have to actively work to break old patterns. But it's a family where I'm seen and valued and included, not because of what I can provide, but because of who I am. And that it turns out was worth every penny of the $12,000 it took to figure out. Sometimes, the most expensive gifts we give aren't the ones we pay for with money. Sometimes, they're the ones we pay for with the courage to demand better for ourselves. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, the people you love learn how to rise to the occasion. What do you think about my decision to set boundaries with my family? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and demanding respect? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when family takes you for granted, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.